Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, using some just released brand new products from Simon Says Stamp. Their Hello Gorgeous release went live late last night, early this morning, and I'm finally getting my voiceover done for this video. I forgot what day it was. Anyway, I started off by running a piece of smooth white cardstock through my die cut machine with the new detail mandala plate, which just creates this gorgeous piercing detail, which in the end I kind of cover up. You can see it in real life, but I was just having fun with it. So I did that first, and then I am ink blending bundled sage distress oxide ink. And I have a bit of post-it tape on my fingers just to keep my fingers from leaving marks, because a lot of times working with distress inks or any water reactive ink, you can leave like smudges and marks from your fingers. So I did that first. I just did simple ink blending. And then I pulled out my Misty and my little stamp and stick mat from Brutus Monroe. I showed this in a recent video. It's just got a nice stick to it, which is really nice for lining up things so they don't move, especially like what I'm going to do here and use a big background stamp. So I removed the foam from my Misty because I'm going to use a red rubber stamp. And then I'd stuck my ink blended panel to this, moved it over a bit more because I wanted to make sure that the entire background is going to get covered by this stamp. But this stamp is the Friendship text background. This came out a while ago. I've shown this in a bunch of videos. I like these little small text background stamps when I'm like all of my little forays into mixed media, which this kind of is too in a sense. So once I had the stamp lined up, I inked it up with that exact same bundled sage ink. I'm really liking the looks with, when you ink blend and then you stamp and use the same colors and all those different intensities of just one ink. So then I'd cleaned my stamp off. I shouldn't have. I should have just left what ink was left on there, but this was an afterthought. The stamp was still in place, so I put my card base inside. I totally forgot to mask off where the fold was. It was just dumb luck that the way I had things lined up that I didn't stamp really past it. And I used my brayer. Again, I've been using that a lot in recent videos to kind of remove some of the ink, also to smooth it out. But like I said, if I hadn't cleaned the stamp off, it would have just been fine. So I stamped that onto what will be the inside of the card. So kind of trying, so I'm jumping back and forth a lot, but it's do these things while you have everything out. So I set the card base aside, pulled my background back out, and then I added some peeled paint distress oxide ink just to the perimeters of this panel. I had trimmed it down, so it's just slightly smaller than an A2 size. It's 4 inches by 5 1/4. So I did that blending with the same blending brush. And then all that ink that's still on my glass mat, I just swirled a wet paintbrush through that, splattered on the background. I also splattered just water onto this background as well because, again, these inks are water reactive. So did my splatter, used up pretty much all the ink on my media mat here. And this is the travel size media mat, by the way. So I have the big one too, but you can see on the left of the screen there, my lights reflect on it and it drives me insane. But I can set the travel one and kind of, butt it over like I do. So the lights aren't constantly reflecting off of it, and just my lights are really bright because I work in a garage. So my filming lights are really bright and they can give me headaches. So I don't like things that create glare. Anywho, just an FYI, this is the travel size map. So I pulled my Misty out again, have the foam back in it, and I inked up the florals from the Mom's Spring. Is it Mom's Spring Flowers? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Mom's Spring Flowers stamp set. This floral image is ginormous. And anyone who knows me or watches my videos knows that I am a big sucker for anything large floral. So that's what I used. There's a bunch of really nice sentiments in here. Happy Mother's Day, happy birthday, etc. But I just wanted to use this big floral cluster. And this is a piece of A2 distress watercolor paper. So you can see just how big this floral, I couldn't even fit the whole thing on here. And that's fine because I'm gonna fussy cut it because I don't have the coordinating wafer die, but there is a coordinating wafer die and I'll link to it. But I'm gonna be trimming things down. It doesn't matter. So right now, this is real time. I haven't sped it up yet. And after I had stamped this onto the distress watercolor paper with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, I smushed that same bundled sage and peeled paint distress oxide inks onto my glass surface. And I also added a bit of Rustic Wilderness distress oxide. And I am just painting with a water brush. And this is real time. This is how long it takes me to paint things. I don't move near as quick as I am able to show with the magic of video editing. So honestly, I just go in lightest color, bundled sage. I drop in a bit of peeled paint. So I work in like clusters so that everything stays wet. Just kind of depends on my mood. But with this, it was like I would just do, a few leaves at a time so that things could remain wet. And then I could just drop in the darker colors. I was purposely avoiding the lines. That is something I still struggle with because it's just a habit to like fill in everything, But this is kind of me doing messy watercolor without actually going outside the lines. I've shown that in a lot of videos too, where I will just splatter it everywhere, But with this, that's not what I wanted to do. So I kept it more contained, but I also still tried not to fill in everything. So now, of course, it's like super sped up. This is like 20 times faster than I actually did this. But I did the same thing with all the florals, but my color combo for those was Squeezed Lemonade, Wild Honey, and that new Saltwater Taffy, which just creates this gorgeous like orangey, peachy, yellowy color blend that just, love. And then for the flower centers, I used Vintage Photo and Ground Espresso. Once everything was done and trimmed, I pulled out some vellum and sentiments from the new XL Spring Greetings stamp set. I've got the word happy and spring and then a sentiment I'm going to put on the inside. And I used my anti-static powder tool on the vellum. I inked up the stamps with that Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink, stamped it and inked it up and stamped them twice onto this vellum. And then I'm going to coat this with the coordinating Saltwater Taffy embossing glaze because I'm just obsessed with it. Like I've mentioned in other videos, embossing glaze, embossing powders are transparent or translucent. You can see through them. It's not obvious, and I tried to show it here in the video as well. Like I die cut the sentiments and I held up, but you can like see the line work through, which is fine. But I want to adhere these with a little bit of foam tape. And I was pretty sure you'd be able to see the foam tape. So one way around this, and also to add a bit of stability, is to adhere another layer or two of vellum. You can just smear glue behind it if you want, but the fastest and easiest way is to use a sticker maker like this little Xyron X sticker maker. I've shown this in other videos. So I ran through my sentiments that I die cut with the coordinating wafer dies, ran them through my little Xyron sticker maker. So it's going to apply adhesive fully to the backs of all these pieces. Before I remove the release paper, I first press really well with my bone folder, just to press into the adhesive. And then this other little trick is I use a stylus tool and I trace around the very edge, which is super easy because there's a raised edge from the die cuts. And I trace around that, and that picks up any adhesive around the very edges, because sometimes when you pull off the release paper and then you pull off essentially the sticker you've created, it's still sticky on the edges and it's annoying. But if you use the stylus, it works. Another option is to run it through your die cut machine with an embossing mat. No dies, nothing, just an embossing mat. And that will press that together really, really well. I'll have to show that in a future video, but I find just using my stylus works fine. So I die cut a couple more layers from just vellum and adhere those together. So it just makes it a little more opaque, but it also adds a little bit more strength, like stability. This sentiment I just peeled off and then stuck it to the inside of the card, which was just perfect. This made it so I don't have to worry about like stamping that sentiment and then trying to emboss it, and the off chance that maybe some of the emboss pattern would have stuck to that stamped background. It's a hit and miss. Usually it's the times I would really want to avoid it that it doesn't stick. And then in a previous video, I was like, the Oxide ink dried too fast. It's always, random. Anyway, I used a pencil to mark where the edges of my background were for this floral. So just so I didn't apply my Big Mama foam tape past that, just to make my life easier. Stuck that to my background. And then for the Happy Spring sentiment, I used a little bit of craft tacky glue and then just little pieces of the same foam tape that I stuck. Since these are chonky, that's what I like to call them, chonky letters, I don't have to do a lot of fiddling. It was just simple little thin strips of adhesive, and you can't see it because I, doubled up that vellum, so it just it gave it just enough, opaqueness to hide that. So I stuck my sentiments into place. I added another layer of foam tape behind my card front, and then got that centered onto my card base. Once that's centered, and my card base is a standard A2 card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I flipped that over, trimmed off the parts that were hanging over with my scissors, and then I used my Studio Caudia rose pink pearls again because they just go so nicely with saltwater taffy, which obviously I'm obsessed with. I've done how many videos, and there's going to be more. Anyway, I adhered those into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. And then I'm going to pair this card with one of Simon's cotton candy metallic envelopes. I need like a peachy colored envelope. I don't have any. I need to find some. Anyway, as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list. I'll link to all the supplies I used. I will link to the new release if you guys want to check it out. There's a ton of fabulous products in it. And stay tuned because I will have more cards and videos coming. I'm just catching up with the editing. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.